Want to welcome everybody for being here tonight. We are hosting the Social Media and Wellbeing in Middle School with Jamie Nunez from Common Sense Media. We're so lucky to have him here tonight. I just really want to thank everyone for being here. This is such an important topic, and this time of night can get very busy, especially when you have middle schoolers and possibly younger. But we appreciate all of you taking your time out of your day to be with us and learning more about what you can do to help your children. Just going to set a couple of ground rules for tonight. The first is that just be aware that we are recording this program. The only people that you will see on screen are the presenters and or the moderators. So we will not be showing anybody's faces, but we will have it available for distribution, and we are going to post it on YouTube on the SRVCPTA YouTube site, which is the San Ramon Valley Council of PTA's YouTube site. If you have logistical questions during the evening, such as I can't see, I can't hear, feel free to drop a chat to Heidi Ellicott. She's up in the right-hand corner, I believe, on the blue screen, and she will be able to help you. If you have questions, because we will have time for a question and answer period at the end, if you have questions that relate to social media issues or concerns, feel free to drop them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. In that area, you can write your question down and we will present it as much as we can to Mr. Nunez, and that way we can have everybody benefit from your question. If you have a question that relates more specifically to your child or a personal situation, out of respect for our family's privacy, we ask that you take that up with your school counselor and or your principal. Those are the individuals who know your child better than us. And between you and your school, you will much more be able to help your child through that situation. I think that is all I have. I do want to introduce Shelley Clark. She is our Area 2 trustee. She's been in that position since December of 2020. She is a past PTA president. She is also on the Social Emotional Wellbeing Committee for SRVUSD. She's also on the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, as well as the Facilities Committee. Shelley is somebody who has enormous insight into our children's well-being and has an amazing concern for all of them. So I'd just like to welcome Shelley and let her go ahead and introduce Mr. Nunez. Thanks so much, Shelley.
Thank you, Ravneet. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending this important session. As Ravneet said, my name is Shelley Clark, and I'm one of the trustees on the Board of Education for San Ramon Valley Unified. And I'm also a liaison on the Social Emotional Wellbeing Committee. We know that social media and tech use are at the center of our students' lives. It's not only our kids, it sometimes seems like we're also distracted by our devices. I am so happy to see that so many of you shared questions with us when you registered. Some of you have joined us this evening because you have questions about what social media limits you should have for your kids and what are the best tools to do that. Others want to know whether you should delay allowing your student to access social media until high school, and some are asking how parents can support teachers' work at school regarding social media use guidelines. You may even have read recent headlines about the risks that social media can pose for kids. Lawmakers are even considering whether young teens should be on social media at all. The concerns are understandable, and it's important to know the impact that social tools have on your child. And while it's easy to be concerned about the platforms that kids are on, we invite you to also think about how social media is where your kids go to connect with one another. Over the next 60 minutes, we are going to be hearing from a content expert who I will introduce in a moment. We will explore the role social media plays in the lives of our students. We will name the ongoing risks, but we'll spend the bulk of our time highlighting ways to support our kids. Here to give us context and discuss the broader impact of social media, we want to welcome Jamie Nunez from Common Sense Media. Jamie serves as the Western Region Manager at Common Sense and supports schools, administrators, educators, students, and parents in addressing digital citizenship. As a former high school teacher, school administrator, and an education center director, Jamie has supported hundreds of schools on how to address tech misuse in schools, From TED Talks on student identity in online spaces to statewide initiatives addressing digital literacy policies in schools, Jamie has over 20 years of empowering others to create healthy digital habits. When not working, Jamie can be found in the ocean teaching his 8-year-old daughter how to surf and swim. At this time, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jamie for what I am sure will be very informative and helpful session.
Shelley, you are amazing. Thank you very much. It's always interesting when I note 20 years of my bio. I'm like, wow, I'm getting old. So I feel good. Not that old's bad, everyone, but thank you for the introduction and happy Monday to you all. Thanks for joining this evening. We are going to spend the next probably about 40 minutes really delving deeper in social media, but I just wanted to I want to preface our conversation by just asking you to breathe, right? So sometimes when we talk about social media, one of the biggest things that happens is like we get really excited and we get really nervous about what our kids are doing online. And one of the things that I might recommend this evening is just really to calm yourself in the space of what we're about to discuss. So, all right, let's get started. If you have any issues with my tone, or if you feel like I'm not maybe I could speak a little bit louder or whatnot, please just share them in the chat. And yeah, we'll just get started. So can I get a check to see if that my screen is visible to everyone? Yeah, thanks, Lauren. I appreciate your thumb nice and high. So Common Sense, really, we'll just start with who we are and then we're going to get started. Really at Common Sense, if you don't know us, we do a number of things. And one of the things that we are attempting to do is really provide families with trustworthy information, education to support their kids, and then an independent voice that they need to actually thrive in the 21st century. So we do things like rate and review movies and books and apps. I work on behalf of the education, where I'm supporting educators and school administrators across the country or across the western half of the United States. And we have a policy arm that ensures that our kids' privacy is intact, as well as providing them access to technology and internet. And one of the things that I'd like to kind of cover are, well, three of the main topics. So if you're like, Jamie, just give me sort of the 3 points so I can move on with my day or, cook my meal. I'd like to kind of highlight these three things. And that is, the first thing we want to address is really thinking about how much distraction is part of our lives and how much our kids are distracted by their social media use. And what we're hoping to do is really attempt to control those inhibitions that our kids are seeking, that our kids are gravitating towards when they scroll down their devices. And the second is we want to name what stressors, digital stressors in particular, impact your own child. What does that actually look like? We want to be able to name and address those. And then finally, if you don't already have them, the hope here is to leave here this evening by sharing and continuing to bring up your family's expectations or guidelines. So those are the things we're going to cover, and let's get started. All right, I want to just sort of name it, what is actually happening in social media now. And this is the part of the agenda where you might start feeling bad about yourself, or you might start noting that the world is coming to an end. Please don't. This is only about 7 minutes. But these are the trends that are happening on social media, as well as artificial intelligence and the influence of social media and AI coming together. What ends up happening and what we're seeing is that social media continues, and the influencers that are on social media continue to challenge our family values. And I want to play for you what these influencers look like and how they actually connect in these spaces. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to double check that can you all hear that audio okay, everyone? I'm looking to you, Lauren, for a little thumbs up again. Did you hear that audio?
We play it again, Jamie.
We built some AIs you can interact with, and then partner
Thank
with
you, Heidi.
awesome people to play some of them to make them even more fun. Introducing Meta's AIs with Tom Brady at Brew. Ready to throw you his deep knowledge of sports. Seriously? How could you not know that? Naomi Osaka as Tamika. Proven it's cool to geek out.
Time for a selfie.
Chris Paul with Perry.
Yeah, I don't need to go through some of that, but these are high-profile athletes and celebrities that are attempting to influence our kids in terms of what it is that they view, how they engage on their social media platforms. That's Meta's sort of AI in WhatsApp and some other Instagram and messengers that you will sort of see. They're challenging the values that you've instilled on your kids. The second example that we're seeing, trends that we're seeing, is AI and social media apps. They promise to actually connect us, and this is an app called Replica. That is being woven into social media apps where you can meet your AI friend. We're starting to see trends across the country around AI apps like this, where kids feeling lonely can actually turn to AI and turn to social media apps that embed artificial intelligence friends and connections that they might have. It's a promise. It's a false promise at that. We also note that sometimes social media allows our kids to actually feel connected. And that is, this is I don't know how trendy it is, but it has been trending. This is the Lemon 8 app. I would take it as like a Pinterest app where kids are sharing what they feel connected to, whether that's clothing or whether that's the latest video. It's a way for them to create their own repositories of their likes online. And what you notice in all of these is a few things. One is these are attempts to distract your child. Two, these are attempts to connect with your child both mentally and socially. And these are attempts for your child that then relay their outlets. And it's entirely up to you to decide whether or not apps like this and the integration of artificial intelligence into social media is actually the right thing for your child. But the truth is, or the challenge here that we pose, that we're posed with this evening, or that we're invited to entertain, is whether or not we like the values that are instilled in these apps. And so I want to start with values because I think it's the most important and the most critical to talk about with your child. And I want to name for them, and I want you to start to name for them what exactly your values are around social media use. So we know that values are principles or rules that inform our own lifestyle and our own experiences. They're often rooted in our own identities and our own culture. And our values around social media use play out when our kids are scrolling through apps or when they're connecting with their friends. So here's a question for you. Here's sort of a very practical advice for you. I want you to think about what your values as a family are as it relates to social media use. Are there things like authenticity where you're challenging your child to be authentic and genuine in the connections that they're making? Are your values around social media use with your kids rooted in kindness, that is being considered or helpful when your child is online? Are they rooted in being open-minded around different activities that they see or different experiences or new ideas that they are listening to? Now, if your conversation with your child around social media use and their usage of it is strictly around how much time they're spending and keeping them safe, those are really great starts, but they don't get at the heart of what we're essentially trying to share and teach your child. And that is that when your child uses social media, they should be grounded in something. And those are values that you want to uphold as a family or as a connection you want to teach your child online. So I'm going to give you a second now, and I want you to really reflect on this practice. And that this is how you might interpret what I've just shared the first few minutes with your child. And that is a simple question like, what is it about this app that you like? You can ask your child that. And then the second question you want to ask your child is, do those connections that the child has with the app, do they align with your family's values or not? Now you might be thinking, Jamie, I have no values at the moment. All my value is just feeling exhausted, and this is what we have. And if that's okay, that's perfectly okay. Drink some water. Tonight's your night to reset. But the hope here is to try to gauge why your child likes that social media app, and then whether or not to determine whether or not that is in alignment with your family values. Let me give you an example just so you don't feel like this is just all theory. I have an 8-year-old, and for some time now, our family has created values that we find to be very important. You might say you're a model digital citizen, Jamie, like you shouldn't be an example, but the truth is I'm not. It's very hard to be on tech, and I'd be the first to tell you I don't always model these values. But we have created in our household this 3-part value system, and that is we are encouraging our child to be curious when they're online, and that includes things like asking thoughtful questions. We ask our child to be extremely empathetic towards others, and that is ensuring that they're caring about people's feelings when they're viewing something, whether that's a movie on Disney or whether they're connecting with others online, and to be able to disagree with someone but not discredit who they are as people. And finally, we ask our child to be kind online, and that is encouraging her to view things that show kindness and actively practice giving compliments. And so, as you can tell, these values are rooted in who we are as people, who I am as a person. But this is a really simple way and a simple activity to start. All right, enough values, Jamie. Let's get on to the meat of this experience. I encourage you again, part 1 is share your values and understand how those values align to what your child is doing online. All right, the second part is really thinking about distraction. And one of the things that we're seeing at Common Sense play in the lives of kids is our kids' inability to stay focused because they are distracted. I mean, this goes without saying, but as adults, we're often distracted as well. And the hope here is, and the call to action for you all is to explore how you can limit those distractions of your child when they are on social media. Let me give you some research now, just to give you some context. So a few months ago, we had the privilege of tracking 11 to 17-year-olds, their phones for an entire week. And the latest research that we have is when we tracked a week in the life of a young person, we found quite a number of things that make up their life. And part of the reason I want to share the next few slides with you is to let you know how distracted your child may or may not be. But secondly, is to see what areas that we need to have conversations around limiting their distractions, but more importantly, ensuring that they stay focused. Right? If I were with you in person, I might ask you in terms of, as an adult, how you modeled these next few slides. But I'll just let you all guess the number at this point. So when we tracked a child's phone, we asked them on any given day, how many times did your child actually pick up their phone? And if I saw you on the chat, I'd want to get your guess, but the median number that we saw a child pick up their phone on any given day is 51 times. We saw that number balloon up to 250 times a day. And just to let you know, so if some of you are like, whew, that's about the same time I pick up my phone every day, well, kudos for you, right? The second is, and this is where it gets a little intense when it comes to distraction, is we then tracked how many times a day their child actually spends on their phone. Now, if you're a parent of a middle schooler or a high schooler, if you don't have a phone or your child does not have a phone in school, just note the sort of the time that's being spent. This isn't an average, this is the middle score, but we found on that middle score, that middle time to be roughly about 43 minutes. Again, we found numbers as high as 6 hours. You might be saying, Jamie, what the heck is that child doing at school? But I just want you to know that during the school day, the child is picking up their phone 43 minutes a day. Something to note in all this, and you might be curious, if you are the person that potentially calls your child during the school day, you might be contributing to that minute. So, and there's no judgment here. We just want to make a note of that. The final sort of connection around distraction is the amount of notifications that we saw when we track the child's phone. And what we found is roughly the child gets notified 237 times a day, anything from Snapchat messages to DMs or direct messages from their peers to notifications to then check their homework assignments, right? So notice that if you were to get notified over 200 times in a day, it might be difficult for you to focus in on any given time, any given task. So the question here, and I want to take a minute to really spend for you to reflect on it, is for you to ask your child the following. And that is, what are the digital distractions that your child encounters during the school day? Again, this is not this is not an opportunity to scold your child about them picking up their phones when they shouldn't. This is a chance for you to actually understand how much and to what extent your child is distracted when they're in school. Now, distractions can look all sorts of ways. I've just shared some research around distractions with their phone use, but this can be distractions in the form of playing online games in the middle of class. This can be distractions by viewing their peers' phone. The key here in all of this is to ensure that you are asking your child how often that they are distracted while they're in school. Let me take a moment to pause. I'm just going to drink a little bit of this juice and have you to reflect on this before we move forward. All right, beautiful. So what I've done thus far is given you some context. I've given you some context around what social media and the implications of social media and AI might be doing to your child to undermine your family's values. And we provided you the context in terms of how distracted your child might be with respect to their phone and phone usage during the day. And I want to now start giving you some tips in terms of what you might be able to do so we can have a pretty rich conversations during our Q&A. I might first start by giving you some tips on how you might limit distractions starting tomorrow. The first is encouraging you to have all devices outside of the bedroom. Now, I know some of you might say, well, Jamie, my child's phone is their alarm. Please email me and I'll give you one of those old clocks. But I can't stress enough how important it is to leave devices outside of the bedroom. It does help with distractions and notifications. The second is, and I want to encourage you all, if you are a family member that tends to call your child during the day, while it's important, right, while it's sometimes really important logistically, I really want to encourage you to model the behaviors of not calling or texting your child during the day, unless you've sort of established some type of connections with their teachers, or if you think there's an emergency. That reliance does allow your child to ensure that it's okay to actually use the phone during the day, and it's potentially not always helpful. And the final piece in terms of limiting your distraction is really thinking about when the device is actually turned off. Now, there's quite a number of recommendations in terms of when to turn it off, and that is 90 minutes before going to bed. It's helpful for your child. Now, you might be saying you're crazy. We use it all the way to the very end? But I do want to encourage that in order for your child to feel like they're connected, they're getting a good night's rest, the recommendation is to turn off your device 90 minutes before bed. All right. All right, let me close with the last piece that I think is really important around social and emotional learning. And I want you to kind of understand how distractions and the lack of values online can actually lead to then stressors. And I want to first just operationally define what a digital stressor is. These are the feelings of feeling emotionally overextended or exhausted by the negative interactions online. And I'm going to turn to sort of a very specific way in which this happens. I want to read this text message to you, and this might be something that your child might explore when they are or connect on when they are messaging their peers. Now, this might not apply to your child because they don't text message, but they play video games. But they all have the similar trends to this. And this is two things need to take place. And we see very quickly take place when a child is exhibiting digital stressors. The first is there's an experience of a negative online interaction with their peer. And then the second is because the child cannot resolve that in the moment, there's often a hostility or confrontation very subtly that takes place. And if not checked, your child can very quickly spiral out of control. If you've ever sort of heard the stories of a fight taking place over an argument, this is often rooted in something very, very subtle. So I'm going to read this to you as if I were a middle schooler and let you understand and explore kind of how these things take place. So this is sent to Bailey, Savannah, and 4 others. If your child participates in a group chat, as many middle school kids and young kids often do, you'll notice this trend, right? So MK says, we do too. And Bailey Rice says, oh, I ruined your life. All we do is try to have fun instead of being rude like you. There is a very quick sort of interaction. It's a dig in someone's personality. And the person says, okay, Bailey, do you want me to have my mom call your mom? Because she will, and she can get you in big trouble, right? So there's a confrontation that takes place, right? And Bailey says, no, she can't, because I'll just tell my mom that you called me the B word. And right there, whether Bailey or this other person is telling the truth or not, there's hostility and confrontation that's going on, right? And so this person then says, well, I didn't, so stop lying. And the trend can go on, right? So I spent a little extra time just so you are aware that it's really important as a next step to check not whether your friends or your kids are text messaging or not, but to really pay attention to where the actual interaction or negative interaction is taking place, and to verify to see whether or not your child has responded in a way that correspond to, I'm going to say it again, everyone, the values that you've upholded as a family. All right, so let me give you an example now of how this takes place on social media and give you a potential way that you might be able to check. Be Real is a social media app that's been live for well over a year now. And if you're not familiar with it, when I share this deck, there's a link here that gives you all about Be Real, the app, and as parents gives you a guide on how you navigate those experiences if your child is on the app Be Real. And so let me give you some context. Be Real is a app that allows you, or that will ping the user and gives them 2 minutes to post an authentic picture of themselves. Now, if I'm a user on Be Real, I have 2 minutes to prepare myself. I might be preparing myself as I'm brushing my teeth, or I might be preparing myself the authentic picture when I'm about to enter a classroom, right? But there's no way to avoid those notifications for your peers. Now, the stressor here is, it's very, very cute in the onset, but if I have to present myself every day and I have 2 minutes to get ready, the stressor here for the child then becomes how to authentically present themselves to others time and time again. Right now, I was on a call with a lovely group, Shelly and Jessica and a few others at the start of the session here, and we presented ourselves very authentically for 15 minutes. But if I had them jump on a call every single day and tell me how their day was, 2 minutes out of their day, at some point they would either hang up and say, I don't want to be your friend, Jamie, or they would have to present themselves in a certain way, right? So, but that's a stress that comes with it, right? Whether or not that's good or not, we want to ensure that that's happening. So why do I emphasize these negative stressors and these apps? Because if you don't check it, and if you don't have the conversations with your child about what exactly is stressing them out in the experiences, and you're only focusing on whether the child is doing positive, safe things online, then you're missing the entire point around social and emotional development for your child. Now, how do you do this? I'm going to give you one question to ask your child. We won't take the entire time to do this, but I want you to think about having your child respond and think about how they resolve issues. And one of the questions you can ask this evening or tomorrow is asking your child, what do they do when they get irritated with or when they're upset by a certain message? And what you're trying to hear is you're trying to hear what your child is doing, how they resolve conflict. If they say ignore, if they say mind your own business, mom, then we have problems, right? We want to make sure that we're exposing the issue and not simply teaching your child what to do in that case. I can assure you it's really, really difficult. But again, a really great question is to suspend your judgments, but suspend your advice, and simply hear from your child how they're resolving conflicts when they're online, whether it's a text message or when they're connected online. All right, I'm going to start giving you resources, and we're going to close with this experience, and that is at Common Sense, we have an SEL guide, and when I share the deck with you all, one of the great things and the great resources that we have, again, completely free, is a family conversation guide about a number of issues that kids might face online. This is a conversation tip guide for you around having conversations around a child resisting the temptations to stay connected online. And again, these are really just simple questions that you might be able to incorporate. If you drop your child off at school, or if you have dinner together, these are simple ways to just start to have that conversation with your child. Again, the key here is not to provide your child with advice and detail. The key here is to listen, to understand whether or not your child understands how to address issues when you're not there. Sound good? All right, I'm smiling at you all just to let you all know that I appreciate you for staying for 30 minutes. So here's a smile of affirmation your way before we close off. Hopefully you all feel that way, and you stay with me for the last few minutes together. All right, I want to close with this, and that is, I want you to think about how you establish your guidelines. These aren't rules, but rather expectations around what your child should and shouldn't be doing when they're on social media. And if your child is not on social media yet, this is a really great way to begin that process, to have those conversations around what you need them to do when they're online. And the first thing I'm going to share with you is a family tech planner. Again, this is a one-page document where you can have both the conversations, but also set expectations for your kids. If you don't already have one, I highly encourage you to click on this link where you will be directed to a printable PDF that you can post. It also allows you to create your own guidelines. You can incorporate your values in there. But these are really great ways to start the process of setting expectations for your kids. And I'll just close with this before we answer some questions. It's I hear this a lot from parents, which is like, Jamie, we already have such a toxic connections with social media, and it's really difficult to get my child to do anything. Today, I'm going to give you the assurance that it's actually okay to reset. It's okay to take the phone away for a month. It's okay to say, as an adult, we are going to reset based on the values or based on the guidelines that we have set as a family. Now, your child might not like you for a month. They might resent you for the next 5 years, but the key here is we want to make sure that your child is okay, that your child has developed the skills, the resilience skills, and a number of SEL skills that are needed. And we want to make sure that you know that you can count on your child when you're not there. And an app doesn't control what the child views, but they control when they're experiencing things that are stressing them out. All right, let me close by answering some questions, but I will first defer to the group to see if there's any questions on the chat that have not been resolved. And if not, I will answer some of the questions that were preset in the registration.
We do not have any questions yet that have come into the Q&A, but I want to invite folks to do that. And I will let you know, Jamie, if I see any.
You're wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, here are some of the questions that came up from registration. If anything pops up from you after these questions, then we can certainly answer them. So the first question that I saw in the registration are, what are the biggest apps that I can monitor my kids' online use? And I see a lot of this, right? That sometimes we defer as parents or caregivers to apps. Now, I can name a number of them off the top of my head, but I want to encourage you to do two things before I share these next two resources. One is I want to encourage you and I want to invite you to set those expectations first and foremost, and note that any parental controls that you set up, whether that's Yardbarker, whether that's PC1, the apps that we share and recommend, that you understand that no app can essentially control the things that your child will view online, and that we need to develop those skills. And just give a quick shout out to San Ramon as a district, because their initiative, their SEL initiative, is just really amazing. So shout out to you, Jessica, and the group for creating some really robust lessons and some great resources for families. But I want to encourage you to do that. Now, if after what I've just shared, you feel like you still need parental controls, these are two very good resources that you can use. The first is an overview of what parental controls are and how to use them. I encourage you to look at this one pager that can kind of share with you what it looks like and how to set it up. And the second is an ultimate guide to parental controls that allow you to, we review and assess a number of parental controls, so you know which parental controls are great for your family's value system as well as your family's values. We do, when we do rate apps that, particularly parental controls apps, we're always mindful of the privacy issue. So if there's data being taken out, we're always mindful to ensure that we are speaking on that behalf. So we want to make sure that you are prepared to read through the reviews if indeed you like parental control apps to drive that. All right. Second question is, Jamie, how much time should my child be on their device? This question I've probably heard for well over 5 years now. And what I would recommend to you is if time is a value that you find important in your family's household, then speak the lingo around time. Lauren, you've spent 5 minutes on that. I'm going to put a timer on that. You have 90 seconds to get off the device, and then be able to reinforce that by modeling those same behaviors on as a parent or as an adult. However, if you feel that time is something that you value, but that you don't want to monitor all the time, then I highly encourage you to instead think about what your child is doing when they are using that device. Is it passive consumption where your child is simply viewing something? Is your child looking at some tinkering video and then trying to tinker online? Each of those have their own respective times and space for that. And so I would encourage you to delve a little bit deeper into time on a device. My only direct recommendation here is time as it relates to putting your device down, and that is 90 minutes before you go into bed. But I can't tell you if you spend 2 hours a day or if you spend 2 hours a week, whether that's good or not. And research tells us that's not, they're very conflicted in terms of what to view because it's so complex. Next question is, at what age should I get my child a phone? And what age should I have my child start using social media? I would recommend the age where your child can get a phone, whether or not they are aware of how to be responsible and use their phone. I might encourage them to look at a phone that's, what do they call a dummy phone or a flip phone, where you're simply getting at communication as the baseline. First, I would highly recommend that you speak with your child around whether or not they're doing something with their phone outside of just connecting with their friends. And again, if you've given your child a phone already and you regret it, now is a wonderful time to take it away and reset those expectations if you think that's possible. But again, there's no direct age a child should or shouldn't be getting a phone. It is when they are responsible and exhibit the skills and the values that you want them to. With respect to when they should start using social media, and that's entirely up to you as parents. If you find that what you're viewing online and social media is something that you think is a value to your household, then and social media is a place, YouTube is a place where they might be able to post those videos, then test it out. But the recommendation here at Common Sense is not to promote social media use because of the amount of privacy invasions that they had, because of the issues that are present in social media. But to really explore what those conversations, what your child is actually going to be doing with social media, if indeed that they want to use it. So I'm probably that jerk that's very vague in each of the last two responses because it really depends all. But I highly would recommend and refrain from social media use if you find that your child is not ready, and if you find that you haven't exhibited those skills and those values that we spoke about at the very beginning. And then the final piece is really, I hear this in the registration, which is how do I actually protect my child or my kids from viewing inappropriate content? Oh, I wish I could close off with something really positive and say, well, here's the app and good luck. But the truth is, it's very difficult to have your child be protected from viewing inappropriate content. However, you can this evening share with your child what to do, if you haven't already done so, what to do when they do view something inappropriate, whether that's nudity, whether that's something racial. We want to teach our kids and practice what we will do during that particular time. And if you find it to be difficult, I'll share my email with you and I will practice with you as a parent, from one parent to another, what you can actually do so you feel equipped to speaking about it without feeling ashamed or without feeling embarrassed in that space, because it can be difficult. All right, let me close with I stop sharing my screen, and let me just take any questions from the rest of the group and then see where we're at here. So
Can you see the couple that came in, Jamie, through the Q&A, or do you want me to read those to you?
would you mind reading them to me?
I do not mind at all. So you covered this a little bit, but I'll read it anyway. So it's, what is the age you recommend for kids to start using social media? I hear a lot about wait until 8th grade for cell phone ownership. I have a 6th grader who doesn't have a cell phone yet. They have a smartwatch and only use it with family, but I don't know for how long I will be able to keep it this way. Thank you.
Wonderful questions. First of all, whoever shared that out, thanks for sharing that, because that seems to be a big issue. The wait till 8 movement is a very popular movement that I've heard and we've shared, and that is developmentally, your child obviously is doing a number of things right around middle school. And there's a growing number of families that think that preventing your child from getting a phone until 8th grade is appropriate sort of direction. Here are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about your child and their phone use. I'm thinking about who your child is actually connecting with. And does that child actually have a phone? And if so, then your child is likely to be exposed to all the things that you don't want your child to be doing when they have a phone. So my recommendation here is not to wait till 8, but to wait till your child actually can share with you what they do when they feel uncomfortable online, what to do when they want when they feel distracted online, how and when they're going to use their phone. You want to be really clear with that before you actually give your child a phone. So whether that's 8th grade or 6th grade, it's entirely up to you. But note those two things. One is, if developmentally your child should be able to understand the power behind that use. And if they're not ready, then you decide as a parent or as a caregiver when you are ready for it. And the second question with respect to, was it social media use? Is that what the question was? I
Yeah, what age you recommend for kids to start using social media. That was the part where they said, I hear a lot about 8th grade, but also just in terms of a cell phone in general. So it's sort of like two parts within the similar questions for both.
Right. That's a great question. So social media use, it's really vague. I think what I highlighted today was the impact of AI in social media use, as that seems to be a growing trend. And what I would recommend is when your child is exploring social media as a tool, first to understand whether or not you feel equipped to know what apps they are on. If you as a parent feel like, I don't know what XYZ app is, Jamie, then it's not maybe fair for you to then give that ownership over to your child. And two is, we want to make sure that those level of communication for a child, when they feel that they are exposed to something both inappropriate and something that they can't handle, they can share with you what exactly they would do in those moments. So that's it's hard for me to reference an age, because every child is different. But I would highly encourage you to wait as long as you can, or to wait in terms of when your child is developmentally responsible to kind of handle some of these issues. So great question.
So there's another question here asking if you have any advice regarding having conversations about limits with kids who are neurodivergent. Someone explained that their child struggles more with distractions and with setting limits.
I might encourage bits of engagements on social media and online, meaning I might be very, very clear about what the experience is online, and have entry points and then transition points from that. Let me give you a quick example. That is, if your child is interested in airplanes, for example, and they are trying to view things like every airplane built in the 1960s. What I might sort of encourage is to talk about airplanes at the very beginning, to view whatever it is that's going to be viewed, to set a timer at the final video, and then to discuss and reflect on what it is that they saw. What we're hoping to do here is build a sequence of connections for that child so they know that when they're experiencing something, that there's an entire process. But Katie and others, I will certainly defer to you because that's a wonderful question for counseling and something that I might would love to hear other perspectives and other points of view. So I won't put you on the spot, Katie Shepard, but that's a great question. If you have any comments on that.
Will you introduce yourself, Katie?
Sure. I'm Katie Shepard. I'm a counselor at Charlottewood Middle School. So working with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And part of the team kind of building this initiative to help our parents and students and families become more aware of just social media conversations and well-being with social media use. But Jamie, I think you answered that question great. Just having those conversations and setting a timer sometimes can be a good way to, kind of signal and create a routine around those social media use.
You're amazing, Katie. I should have just shut my mouth from the first minute. You would have led the conversation much better. Thank you very much for your wonderful points.
And we've got another question here asking, I like this question, about how invasive we should be in terms of checking our kids' phones.
That's a great question. Geez, let me give you a hug or a high five, person that answered that question. Here's the first thing I might recommend. I might, after this call, go into the mirror, go into the bathroom or your hallway and look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, how am I modeling the behaviors that I want to see in my child? And am I explicit in ensuring that when I am modeling those behaviors, I am sharing with my child what it is that I'm doing? What I often see and the tension that I see when I speak with students is students will often say, or kids will often say, my parents don't understand, and my parents are the biggest culprits of this particular behavior. And so I haven't answered the question yet because I cannot stress enough how important it is for you not only to model, but to share when you're not modeling the behaviors that you're seeing from your child. Let me give you a quick example and let you know that I'm raising my hand nice and high. I sometimes have calls very early in the morning at the same time my child is waking up. And we have a rule in our house not to wake up with a phone or tech. And my child will wake up and she'll see me answering a text. Now I can do one of two things. I can say, well, mind your own business, little eight-year-old, because that's not, this is what Papa's doing for work. Or I can simply explain to her that I had to take an early call because I'm working with someone from a different time zone. And this is what we're doing to make an exception of that. It doesn't, I'm not agreeing with it. I'm not justifying it. I'm simply explaining to her what I'm doing. Now, once you've done that, the second part in the maybe something to consider with respect to the question is so difficult. I want to you just have to ask, it's perfectly okay to be invasive. If you feel that your child is unsafe, if you feel like your child is keeping something from you, if you feel that the relationship that you have with the device is not transparent. Again, you are the owner of the phone. You are legally responsible for things that happen. And now it's up to you to decide whether or not you're doing that out of curiosity, or you're doing that to teach your child something, or that's an impulse that you have as a way to potentially control or connect with your child. Now, if it's the latter, my encouragement is to simply check yourself and to trust your child and to teach them that skill. However, I want to point out that it's very, very important that if you feel that your child is not doing what's expected of them, and you're having a conversation about, things like mom, leave me alone, or dad, leave me alone, or auntie, I'm just doing this and I need my space. We want to be mindful that that's not how the conversation should be. The conversation should be, here are the values, here's the expectations, and now I am checking your phone to ensure that this is what is actually taking place. And the fact that you can't understand that means that we need to reset our relationship with the device. And that's really that simple. Now, if you need me to come to your house for maybe some cake or something, I'm happy to repeat that to your child and then actively practice that with you. But you can do it, and this is a really great way to reset those connections. So.
So I have another question here that actually came in today from a late registration of someone who registered late in the day today. So I don't know if you'd seen it. It asks, and you've covered this a little bit, but how can teens be convinced to self-monitor the amount of time they spend on social media?
Oh, yeah. If you find the answer to that, please let me know, because as an adult, it's just really difficult to self-monitor on that. And I'm being facetious here, but I do think we are up against a very big ecosystem of impulse, right? So to expect a child that whose prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, who sort of relies on these impulses to self-monitor, is simply just asking for something negative to happen. And again, I don't mean to be so sour around this point, but what I would encourage is not to set the limits, but to ask your child, here's the output that I want from the engagement of this tool that we're using, right? So if you're using social media app to engage and to ensure that your child is, or to view that your child is connecting with his peers, then ideally we want something out of it, right? Do you feel connected with your peers? If so, I need you to show me what that looks like, right? And so we're looking not for them to self-monitor, but rather to showcase what it is that you want your child to be doing on these devices. Yeah, other than that, I think setting a timer is always helpful. But for teens, the expectation should be, we don't want you to be passive in this engagement. We want you to actually create the experiences that we want and have as a family. So that's a great question, though. Jeez, that's a wonderful, wonderful question, everyone.
All right, so I got another one here. And this one actually, I think it's going to probably be best answered by Jessica Coulson, who I will allow to introduce herself after I ask the question. And this also came from a later registration to attend this event. What services does SRVUSD provide to support students?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Coulson. I'm the coordinator for social and emotional learning and college and career readiness for the district, and I'm really thrilled to be here with you all tonight. I think we provide a bunch of different services depending on the needs of the student. At middle school and high school, there are groups. If the topic is of interest and relevant to the student, students can always access their school counselor one-on-one. And we also have, for more intensive supports, referrals to skip counselors who are counseling interns that are coming from the Discovery Counseling Center and are working with us to achieve full licensure. And so they see a handful of students in our schools. We also provide services through the wellness centers at the high school with our school social workers, who also support some interns at times. So there's a bunch of different ways that students can access supports. I think the most important thing is for them to reach out to a school counselor or another trusted adult with whom they feel comfortable dialoguing, so that that person can help direct them to the appropriate supports.
Could I just add to that, that
Please,
as a district and as a board, social emotional learning and well-being are so important to us, because we realize how important they are to our students' success. So we know that social media has a lot of positives, but we also recognize that there's a lot of negatives that can come out of overuse or abuse of social media. And social emotion, it threatens their social emotional well-being. And social emotional learning, research has shown that it improves academic achievement by an average of 11 percentile points when our students are in a good place socially, emotionally, and are able to communicate their needs and feel like they're cared for and supported. So as a district, It's a priority for us, and I loved hearing everything you said tonight. I think you had a lot of really good tools and good points for our parents and our caregivers. And I hope we can just continue with this work, because I think that it's really, really important for having well-rounded students and for their success in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. That's really great. I think we've got time for one more, Jamie. Let's see if I can just find it here. Hold on just a moment. So it's a question, hold on a second, about in-game chatting. It's not really social media, but this particular parent considers it to be like social media. So should they allow their kid to use it, in-game chatting?
I think it's a wonderful question. I think there are features of it that are very similar to social media, right? That is, I'm playing a video game and I'm having a conversation. Here are the things that I want to be mindful of if I'm you as a parent asking this question. The first is what type of conversations take place, right? And just as if you were to ask your child, what did you all talk about today? Or what's a great question that you raised with your friends? I want to be mindful of what it is, right? So should it be allowed? That is asking you to ask your child what should friends be allowed to talk to one another? What I'm more concerned with and what I want to invite you to think about is, what are those conversations? Can you observe those conversations? What happens when something goes very sour? Maybe someone mentions a comment that is, charged in a particular way. And what does your child do at that point? Do they laugh? Do they ignore it? Do they confront it? And if they can't answer those questions and instead respond by saying, get out, or it's none of your business, or, mom, leave me alone, then that child is not ready to have a communication in those spaces. We want to be really clear that we're developing those skills to ensure that your child knows what to do when they feel uncomfortable. That's really what the bottom line is. And so the encouragement here is, ask your child what they do, ask them about the topics, and then ask them about what it is that they do when they feel either uncomfortable or stressed or something that where they have to resolve their actual conflict. So
can I add just one more comment on that?
Of course I do.
I think a big question, my first question is, who are they chatting with? Because if they're chatting with their friend or their cousin, it can be a very positive and create a more interactive experience, though I'd almost prefer that they have headphones doing verbal chat, right? So it creates an experience. But who are they chatting with? Do they know the person? Do you know the person? Do they think it's their buddy? But who knows? Know what I'm getting at. It's the stranger stuff. It's the predator stuff. So I would want to know who they're gaming with. I always want to know who my kids are interacting with. And, I have a 21-year-old, an almost 18-year-old, and a now 15-year-old. And so I've been through the ringer with social media over the years. We don't have phones in the rooms, and that's helped. I have been the parent who monitors. When they were younger in particular, I did pick up their phones periodically, and I looked at their text strings, and I looked at their interactions. I looked at what the other kids were saying and what kids were saying, and I gave a lot of leeway. If there were certain topics that I would not necessarily love to hear about, but I wanted them to have some sense of privacy, I wasn't busting them on some of the swearing. But if I saw something that really crossed a serious line, I would. And sometimes it helped them too, because they knew that I was looking occasionally and intermittently, and that also gave them some protection from interacting in ways where they said, oh, my mom's paying attention. I can't be doing this. But I think, I hate it depends, etc. But I think it depends on their age. And I don't believe this is going to be controversial. Children have an inherent right to privacy in some of these things. It's my phone. I pay the bill, and it's my job to oversee them. As they get older, I believe they are entitled, especially if they're earning it to more and more privacy and more leeway, but it's still our job to be there. It's still our job to pay attention. It's still our job to set limits. It's still our job to understand the, like you said, the difference between mind-numbing use and something where they're getting something educational or interactive, etc. So sorry, I just
Such great points. Yeah, I just, yeah, you should share your email address so I can extend babysitting services for my child as well. That is just so, but you've raised such wonderful points, and I just echo everything you share. I just can't stress enough of what the things that you shared. It really depends. But we do need to find out not only who our kids are connecting with, but what it is that they're doing in each of those contexts as you shared. So thank you.
I really want to thank you, Jamie, and I think IDEO is a great way to close. I put into the chat, and so everybody should be able to see it, that Jamie's email address. And so he did want us to share that with you. Thank you, Jamie. And so if you have questions that didn't get answered, I know there might have been one or two more, but we're at the end of our time. So I just want to respect everybody's time. So you can feel free to email Jamie. And also we will be certain to share out the slide deck that Jamie shared, which has links to the resources in a follow-up, and we'll share the video. You can subscribe to the SRVCPTA YouTube so you don't miss when that comes out. And we'll be sharing some other things in a follow-up email, let's say within the next week, to everybody who registered. So we just really thank you all for being here.
Thanks all. Have a beautiful evening. Take care of yourself. Thanks for being alive today.
thank you, Jamie. Thank
Mhm.
you, everyone.